Good evening, good evening. At this time, we'd like to get started. I ask everyone to take their seats. We'll be starting momentarily. Thank you and welcome.
As you all know, I was on the federal bench for just about 20 years, and I had a wonderful career in the state, and so I decided that I want to put together a think tank, a policy center that would adjust and address social issues.
First met Judge Williams was in 2004. I was brought before him because I had been lumped into a conspiracy.
I felt that the overall circumstances did not warrant a life sentence. I attempted to give him a sentence below that, and the United States Court of Appeals directed that I give him a life sentence. And I put on the record at sentencing that I didn't like that.
I committed a crime, and I had to pay for my crime. But life plus 10 years for 60 grams of crack cocaine, that's kind of unbelievable. In my heart, I knew that Judge Williams tried to do the best he could. I thanked him for trying to give me a lesser sentence.
I sent a letter on his behalf. I was excited when President Obama wrote him back and commuted his sentence to time served. He's now back in the community, and he's helping individuals similarly situated.
My time here now is to give back. There are men and women that are incarcerated now that need a voice. I want to make sure that they have an outlet, that they have somebody they can come to.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Long. I'm the president and chair of the Alexander Williams Jr. Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics. On behalf of Judge Williams, the board of directors, and our staff, we'd like to welcome you to our third annual lecture series. Before we get started with this evening's program, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all of our corporate sponsors and supporters for your generous support. Without your support, we would not be able to do and accomplish the things that we've done, and your generous support will allow us to continuing to fulfill this ambitious mission of this organization. So we really appreciate you. As today's Veterans Day, and in remembrance of the recent passing of General Colin Powell, the AW Center would like to wish a sincere thank you to all of our veterans for their remarkable service, and to let them know how much we appreciate the sacrifices they've made defending and protecting our country. So thank you if there are any veterans in the crowd. Now I'm looking around, I don't see him, but even if he's not here, I am going to first acknowledge and congratulate one of our now former board members of the AW Center, Eric Barron. On October 7th, Eric Barron was sworn in as the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, becoming the first U.S. attorney, black U.S. attorney in the District of Maryland. So, Eric, I know you may not be here, but you're here in spirit. Eric was one of our founding board members, and he's been with us from the start. And while we'll miss his contributions to this organization, and there have been many contributions he's made, we know that he's been called to do greater things. And Eric, we're just proud of you, and just wanted to let him know that, and we're confident that he's going to make a great U.S. attorney for this state. With that said, I have the additional honor and pleasure of introducing our Master of Ceremonies, award-winning meteorologist, Mary Marshall from WUSA 9. Mary joined WUSA 9 weather team in September 2017. Prior to WUSA, she worked at WBAL TV in Baltimore, where she covered snowstorms and ice storms, which we had plenty around that time. And prior to meteorology, Mary enjoyed a career in news, serving as a desk assistant, an assignment editor, and a field producer at ABC News in Los Angeles. In addition to forecasting the weather, Ms. Marshall has taught journalism and weather literacy courses at Morgan State University and enjoys going to schools to encourage students to pursue STEM careers. Mary is a native of New Orleans, a huge Saints fan, and a proud graduate of Louisiana State University. Last year, she participated in the Climate Change and Health cohort with Yale School of Public Health, where she worked to address what is clearly one of the greatest public health challenges of the 21st century, global warming. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Mary Marshall.
Good evening. You know, I meant to take out the part that I was a big Saints fan. I want to play nice with the kids in the sandbox at the Washington football team, so I was almost ducking for a moment when he said that. But it is a pleasure to be here this evening. I have met many of you, and some of you have said, hey, I watch you. I'm like, great, let's keep that going. You watch, I stay employed, it's a good deal. So I really do appreciate that. So without further ado, we are going to get this ceremony started. And one of the first people I would like to bring to the stage this evening is Dean Gregory Ball. He's the Dean of the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences at the University of Maryland.
The College of Behavioral and Social Sciences at the University of Maryland is proud to support the Judge Alexander Williams Center and the Department of African American Studies in their vitally important work to advance criminal justice reforms. The AW Center and the department exhibit strong leadership on key strategic initiatives and college priorities, such as our initiative to eliminate anti-Black structural racism. The Judge A.W. Center affords our students invaluable professional development opportunities in urgent areas of academic research and public policy reform. Taken together with their proactive investments in forging community partnerships for education, justice, and ethics, the Judge A.W. Center truly embodies what it means to be terrapin strong in the face of adversity. The fierce urgency of the social challenges we face today, which include the destructive consequences of mass incarceration, make support for the types of programs and initiatives being designed, implemented, and advanced by the Judge A.W. Center more important than ever. Please join me in congratulating this year's honorees and in supporting the important work of the Judge Alexander Williams Jr. Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics at the University of Maryland. Thank you, Judge Williams.
And joining us now with remarks is Dr. Cameron Patterson. He is the Director of Programs at the Judge Alexander Williams Jr. Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics.
Good evening, good evening. Thank you all for being here. As you can see, we recently had the opportunity to host a press conference along with our strategic partners in Baltimore, specifically Reverend Dr. Alvin Hathaway, and we celebrated the 113th anniversary of Justice Thurgood Marshall's birthday. And we have before us a really exciting opportunity to expand our efforts to West Baltimore, which, as many of you know, is one of the most, if not the most, divested zip code in the U.S. And we are moving forward with that project in partnership with a number of stakeholders, and we're really looking to provide some important resources to the residents of West Baltimore, including programs in the areas of legal advocacy, gun violence intervention, juvenile diversion, and an ethics institute. And so I just want to ask you to take a moment and turn your attention to the screen for a brief presentation about our involvement in the Justice Thurgood Marshall Center at PS 103.
PS 103, school that was built in 1877. But then this building in 1910 became a school for people of African descent, for colors, for African Americans. It was a school that went from first grade through 8th grade. It was a school of educational excellence. And then about 1914, here comes the later Justice Thurgood Marshall, who comes to this school, and this was his early foundational learning.
When Thurgood Marshall went there, it was literally the center of the black community. It was in the heart of the Upton area, Division Street, where the school was right in between that and the commercial strip, which is Pennsylvania Avenue. The large number of stores and professional offices that were on the corners of Druid Hill Avenue and McCullough Street have vanished. Cess's restaurant is no longer there, so we don't have an awful lot preserved, and so we ought to keep what does remain. And the building is, in pretty much intact. That's what's amazing about it. About 15 years ago, Mayor Dixon appointed me as chair of a committee to make sure the building was preserved. At that time, it was deteriorating a little bit. Trees were growing up in it, so we stabilized the building.
So we want to restore this building, restore it to its historic significance, make it a living, active community center in this community.
Thurgood Marshall is, and has been for some time, an inspiration, an example of what is possible when pressing issues are faced. He is truth positive that the adage, "Nothing beats a failure but a try," is a sound one. I submit, for those reasons, Public School 103 can and should be no less an inspiration.
Well, we are now excited to introduce Latara Harris to join us. She's Regional Director for AT&T External Affairs in Maryland. Latara.
Step up here and don't fall, right? That's the trick. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Well, I just have to tell you, I'm sitting here and I'm often sort of prepared with talking points, and I had some in my bag here, but I really thought about you, Judge. My goodness, what you have built, what you have meant to so many of the folks that are here in this room. In my brief interaction with you initially, that led to us funding from AT&T the boot camp at this amazing institution. And I just want to thank you, sir. So if we could all please give him another round of applause. I mean, truly, truly amazing, truly amazing. So again, I'm Latara Harris, the Regional Director for External and Legislative Affairs for AT&T. We are so pleased to be a part of this in some small way and want to continue this relationship moving forward. The fight for justice is just that. It's incredible. I'm looking at all of those familiar faces on that video, which incredibly it was well done. I hadn't seen Judge Bell in a long time, but it was so good to see him. A friend of ours, Franklin Lee's father, was a principal of that school years ago. He's also an attorney. So on behalf of AT&T, we want to be here. We just want to acknowledge and continue this work, and we're just so pleased to support the boot camp and keep this momentum going. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but thank you all so much for the opportunity.
Gotta help each other out sometimes, right? Lend a hand. I think that's what you all are doing here as well. All right, we are pleased to have Judge A.W. Center Board Member Christopher Lambert, Esquire, join us now.
I guess I'm inspired to diverge from my remarks also. To say that it's a truism that you should never meet your heroes. I taught school in Baltimore County for 20 years, but before that, for 11 years, I was an attorney. I guess I am an attorney. I don't deny it. I was very familiar with Judge Williams and really regarded him as a hero in terms of my involvement in pro bono activities and then trying civil rights cases, and I guess ultimately in some way moving to a way to help individuals outside the legal system. It has been a joy and an honor to work with him in this program, and I want to thank him also. I'm also honored to introduce our first Justice Award recipient, the Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Baltimore Law School. Since 2008, the Innocence Project Clinic has sought to identify individuals who have been wrongly convicted in Maryland state courts and to provide them with assistance in the investigation of their claims. The clinic's work has led to exonerations of the wrongly convicted as well as advocacy for changes in Maryland law to create a more just criminal justice system. Moreover, in doing this extraordinary work, they've now training years of law students and lawyers to be effective and powerful advocates for justice. At this time, I guess we want to look at the screens for a brief presentation about the clinic.
Suter is a well-known and highly revered, highly regarded attorney. I met her when she took cases before me when I was a federal judge. She had a lot of experience litigating prison issues and trying to get people released from unfair sentences and so forth. She is now the executive director of the Innocence Project at the University of Baltimore School of Law. She's doing a wonderful job there, and I'm just fortunate to be able to have her with us this year as our lecturer.
My name's Erica Suter, and I'm the director of the Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Baltimore. The Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Baltimore is a collaborative project between the Maryland Office of the Public Defender and the University of Baltimore School of Law. And we exist to help exonerate the innocent in Maryland. And it's a teaching clinic, so I'm the director, but I'm also a professor of the practice, and I get to do this work while training sort of the next generation of lawyers how to do this work as well. I've always wanted to be a criminal defense attorney, and I sort of fell into this area of wrongful convictions, but it really suited sort of my talents and my interests, and to me is one of the most noble pursuits. People where everything has gone wrong and you're stepping in and working with them to try to undo a miscarriage of justice. It's it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do this work. A lot of people read about in today wrongful convictions where people have been exonerated by DNA, and that has been a significant number of cases that the Innocence Project Clinic has worked on. So people who have served long periods of years, sometimes 25 years, who are innocent. And through the work of the clinic, evidence was able to be found and retested to show that these were, in fact, innocent people. Freeing humans and teaching students are my heart's two greatest joys. Being able to reach somebody that has been sort of written off and being able to change not only their life, but their families' lives and their communities' lives, and being able to be able to take somebody who's been shut away and forgotten and help them to gain their life back is something amazing to be able to do. Having the clinic recognized is such an honor. Being able to do this work in and of itself is a privilege and an honor. My clients are some of the strongest, most wonderful people that I know. And to be recognized by Judge Williams, who's, you know, an iconic figure, is truly an honor to the clinic.
It is now my privilege to invite Professor Suter, the director of the University of Baltimore Innocence Project Clinic, to the stage to receive the award in recognition of stellar performance and commitment to excellence in criminal justice reform. Thank you very much.
And congratulations again on a job well done. At this time, we'd like to welcome back Dr. Patterson.
For far too long, we've used incarceration as an evasion, as a way of not dealing with the social injustices and challenges of poverty, inadequate education and healthcare, mental health, and drug addiction. Worse, the disparate impact of unequal justice in the U.S. criminal legal system has ensured that incarceration continues to function as a mechanism of social control, systematically perpetuating racial discrimination and reproducing social inequality. The criminalization of social problems and Black people in our country has created a mass incarceration epidemic whose collateral consequences have rended the fabric of vulnerable and disadvantaged communities, creating an overwhelming need for reentry, advocacy, and services. Our next 2021 Justice Award honoree is working to support the transition and restoration of returning citizens' rights. Most importantly, he is giving our returning citizens permission to dream again. Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your attention to the screens for a brief presentation about the vital and important work being advanced by Dr. Ronald D. Garrett, Director of the Bridge Center at Adams House.
Quite elated the last few years just watching the Bridge Center in Prince George's County. It's a one-stop shop for all of the persons who have been recently released from prison. They come over and they get information on jobs, on writing resumes, on health issues, They get their license information there, and they also get just a lot of information on how to transition back into the community. And the Bridge community has just done a wonderful job reaching out to persons who are reentering and transitioning back to society.
My name is Ron Garrett. I serve as the director of the Bridge Center at Adams House. The Bridge Center at Adams House is a one-stop shop for returning citizens, veterans, and transitional age youth. We are an interagency collaboration between the Health Department, the Department of Social Services, Department of Family Services, Department of Corrections, and about 30 community-based organizations. The Bridge Center allows for individuals who do not have the family support network when they re-enter the community from incarceration to be able to be provided with housing, to be provided with transportation, to be provided with job training and the soft skills necessary to be successful upon their reintegration. Re-entry and reintegration services for our loved ones that are coming home from incarceration is absolutely vital, because there are so many individuals that are released from incarceration who immediately have the pressure of contributing to the rent, to the mortgage, to groceries, to buying school clothes, and that in and of itself can be overwhelming for an individual that has been out of society for 5, 7, 10. And when we talk about someone that's been out of society for 20 years or more, it can be overwhelming. There's been numerous individuals that have come to the Bridge Center after being released from either the Prince George's County Department of Corrections, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, or the Maryland Department of Public Safety, who have obtained employment, housing, careers, that, if you will, as well as some have even gone to work for other community-based organizations in Prince George's County. The Bridge Center at Adams House is a great team of people that have made the impact that we're having on this county possible. And it means the world of us for someone like Judge Alexander to recognize the Bridge Center because of his stature and the great amount of people that he has affected throughout his career. The work that he has done, he's really been a trailblazer from the idea and the perspective of this restorative justice model, where we are not just locking people up for the sake of locking people up, but doing so in a manner that when they are returned to the community, they return better and have the ability to become an asset in our society as opposed to a liability.
This time I'd like to invite Dr. Garrett to the stage to accept the 2021 Justice Award on behalf of the Bridge Center.
We'd like to call to the stage now Rosalind Tang, principal at Miles and Stockbridge and board member at the Judge A.W. Center.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce the next award recipient, the Victims' Rights Foundation. The Victims' Rights Foundation is a Montgomery County-based nonprofit that performs volunteer support services on behalf of victims of violent crimes, domestic violence, and many more. Greg Wims founded the foundation in 1996, and the organization has raised over $1 million for victims of violent crimes since its inception. At this time, I'd like to turn your attention to the screens for a brief presentation about one of this year's Justice Award honorees.
Dr. Wims is also a great advocate for social justice. He's out of the Montgomery County area, and his organization has done a lot to address unfairness and challenges of issues and victim rights and that sort of thing.
My name is Greg Wims, the founder of the Victims' Rights Foundation. We started the organization in 1996, and we're 25 years old today. 3 young women were murdered, and their bodies were thrown out on the agricultural reserve over in Greenbelt in Prince George's County. And at the time, which was 25 years ago, there was really no organization to help the families, especially black families. And it was the first time that in recent memory that we could tell that 3 women of color, who were black women, were actually killed. So we
I'd like to congratulate all the award recipients. Your work is so profound, it's so necessary, and it is appreciated. So I've only exchanged about maybe 1 or 2 emails with him, met him for the first time tonight about a little over an hour ago. And when you meet people, you get a first impression, right? You get a gut feeling. Well, aside from all of the accolades and accomplishments, the gut feeling I got was that he's good, he's genuine, and he's on the right side of things. So it is my honor and my privilege to introduce to you Judge Alexander Williams, Jr. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. All right, great. And as you all know, I always tell people we don't keep folk here all night. We move forward, and that's always something I did when I was on the bench. I don't need a whole lot of talking. But anyway, let me express appreciation for the generous support and kindness by all of you, all of our sponsors and contributors and friends, and those attending today in person and those who are looking at this virtually. Thank you. And I want to thank the University of Maryland President of College Park, President Darrell Pines. I want to thank Dean Ball, who you heard from earlier, of the College of Behavior and Social Sciences here at the University of Maryland College Park. Sangeetha Haven, Chair of the Department of African American Studies, and the professors and the staff at the Department of African American Studies for their joint support provided to the Judge A.W. Center. I also want to thank our wonderful MC, Mary Marshall. Let's give her a hand. She's done a wonderful job, and we just appreciate her just stepping in and agreeing to be our MC for today. I must acknowledge my wife, Joyce, who has played a huge part in my success in the career throughout my professional career. So Joyce, she's here. Joyce, stand. You recognize our lovely bride, Joyce E. Williams. Now today, ladies and gentlemen, is not only our 3rd lecture, but it's held annually every 2nd Thursday of each November. But today it happens to fall, of course, on Veterans Day, and we honor those who have served this country across the years, defending our democracy, our liberty, and our freedom. All of the veterans in the house today, can you just raise your hand or stand so we'll know who you are? All our veterans. All right. Thank you. All right. Now, following 20 years of enjoyable life on the federal bench, I wanted to apply my experience and passion to establish a policy center to address challenging issues of our time faced by the underserved and disadvantaged communities. And so the mission of the Judge A.W. Center is to research,
develop solutions, and provide a forum for lifting up and discussing prevailing issues and challenges faced by the underserved and disadvantaged communities across Maryland and beyond. We have sponsored programs and initiatives focused on educational preparedness and bridging the achievement gap, criminal justice reform, and providing ethical guideposts for building integrity and responsibility of public and private leadership. I am very excited and proud about the growth and the potential of the Judge A.W. Center. Now, some of our important, exciting initiatives include, one, our leadership program, where we've provided paid internships to assist students, our leaders for tomorrow, to assist and support them as they navigate and prepare and plan their strategy for a successful career laboratory. These students are so critical to the success of this center. They bring enthusiasm and their computer skills, they research, they provide hands-on support, and they implement and support several of our initiatives, and they assist in developing proposals and recommendations. You see in the program two of our recent interns, and at this point is Allie here? Allie Meredith here? Where is she? Yeah, there she is in the back. She's one of our interns, a student, a senior at the University of Maryland. She does a wonderful job. She wanted to volunteer her time after she was in one of my classes I taught at Maryland. And she was interested in any pay. I said, no, we pay our students. And that's what your support goes to. We pay our students to work and give us assistance. So, Allie, thank you for all that you are doing. We also have, as one of our initiatives, a weekly podcast show called the Judge A.W. Center, Reflections on Justice. I went to my director of communications and I told her that I wanted to reinstitute that cable program I had when I was the elected state's attorney. And she said, no, Judge, we don't do that anymore. You have to have a podcast. Get with it. And so we have a podcast where I invite guests and interview them on very important issues of the day. So that is every week. We're going to start our third season right after January. So tune in. Look at our website, and you'll be able to get the citation and the link there. In the spring, we're going to launch our very first social justice boot camp. And by partnering with institutions in Baltimore City, we plan to educate students in the area about what they can bring to light to issues which they have a passion about changing. And the goal of the boot camp is not only to leave the students equipped with the necessary tools to advocate the change, but also to allow them to take strides to make change before they enter college and begin their careers. So that's a program we have coming up very soon. And then finally, you heard Dr. Patterson, our director of program. He talked about PS 103. We hope to expand our program to Baltimore to operate several exciting Judge A.W. programs at the new Thurgood Marshall Center, also known as the Henry Highland Garnet School, which is the elementary school attended by Thurgood Marshall and many other legends that's now being renovated. I'm very excited about moving to West Baltimore and to expanding, and we hope to get that program underway at the end of next year, or certainly by the beginning of 23. So that's what we're doing. We're on target. I'm so proud of what we're doing, what our staff is doing, and we hope to encourage you to continue to support us in what we're doing, because as I told my staff, we're going to make this policy center one of the foremost policy centers in America, the Judge A.W. Center. We're going to do it. Now, let me take a couple minutes to introduce our speaker. Again, her bio was in the program. She's already been introduced, but it's appropriate for me to make sure that we all are acquainted with her outstanding experience. I first met Erica during my service on the federal bench. I was struck by her passion and expertise in representing inmates and other returning citizens in post-conviction litigation on both the federal and the state level. I found her to be an accomplished appellate and post-conviction criminal defense attorney, and that was her reputation. Erica's advocacy across the years has resulted in relief for many defendants, including reduction of hundreds of years of incarceration. And separately, the life sentences of 10 of her clients were modified or vacated. I learned a few years after knowing her that she was the daughter-in-law of my great friend from high school, Joy Suter, who was here this evening with other alumni and class members of the great Theodore Roosevelt High School Rough Riders. And some of my Rough Riders are here. Can you stand up? My Rough Riders. These are my colleagues from high school. They're here. And we are supporting, yes, thank you so much. Now, Professor Erica Suter is the director of the Innocence Project Clinic at the University of Maryland, the University of Baltimore, School of Law, and she works as an assistant public defender at the Maryland Office of the Public Defender as part of a unique collaboration between the Maryland Office of the Public Defender and the University of Baltimore School of Law. As professor of the practice at the University of Baltimore School of Law, Erica manages the Innocence Project Clinic, teaching and supervising student attorneys who handle cases and advocate for reforms within the University of Baltimore's clinic law program. With respect to her role at the Public Defender's Office, Erica provides agency-wide support and strategic vision to innocent litigation. In collaboration with the Forensic Division, Erica serves as a resource and provides training to the Office of Public Defender attorneys and staff on relevant social science research, including coercive interrogation tactics by law enforcement. She addresses unreliable eyewitness identification. She incorporates scientific research, DNA testing into legal arguments, and she finds strategic ways to address newly discovered evidence that no one had before trial. Our state is so grateful that Erica is training the next generation of lawyers at the clinic to further this important work of criminal justice reform. Now, just to sum up, Eric is a council member of the Criminal Law and Practice section of the Maryland State Bar Association, and she is the president-elect of the Maryland Criminal Defense Attorneys Association. Erica also has experience working with students enrolled in making an exoneree class at Georgetown University, and also is an adjunct professor at the University of District of Columbia's David A. Clark School of Law. She's been selected to the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association's Best Lawyers Under 40, and as a super lawyer. She earned her JD from Georgetown University, her master's from the University of Chicago, and her BA from Bates College, I believe that's up in Maine. And so without further ado, it's my joy and privilege to present as our lecturer for the evening, Professor Erica Suter.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Judge Williams, for that very kind introduction. So the other day, I was catching up with a friend that I hadn't spoken with in a long time, and I was telling her about this case that I'd been working on for about 13 years, and how excited I was that there was relief on the horizon for this client. And my friend turned to me and she asked, "How do you work on a case for 13 years? How do you not become despondent?" And And I thought about it, and I explained, I'm perpetually looking for the next opportunity on the horizon, and he never gave up on me, so how could I give up on him? And I was searching for how to explain something that did sound pretty nuts now that I was saying it out loud. And I thought about it, and I said, well, I'm a weeble wobble. And she said, a what? I said, a weeble wobble. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a weeble wobble is a toy from my childhood. They were egg-shaped and made to look like people. I think they were weighted on the bottom. And the trick is, you could push a weeble wobble, and they would rock back and forth, but you couldn't knock it down, and you couldn't knock it over. So I guess I'm a weeble wobble. Not your typical lawyer trope. I'm not a superhero swooping in to rescue people in dramatic fashion. I'm not a pit bull. Definitely not a magician. I'm a weeble wobble. I hang in, and I chip away, and I keep coming back. I'm dogged. I know how to believe in outcomes that I haven't seen, as do my clients. Now, I'm here today because my mom believed in me. My mom has a 5th grade education in her country. She eventually earned her GED here. She cleaned houses when I was a kid, amongst other jobs. And if I told my mom that someday I was going to play in the NBA, now mind you, I'm 5 feet tall, I'm not very coordinated, my mom would have been plotting on how she was going to get the money to buy me a pair of Jordans. And I didn't understand the magnitude of that gift when I was a child, her boundless faith in me. I had some challenging circumstances growing up, and I remember the frustration of not having the power to change my circumstances at the time. It's what made me want to be an attorney. I have wanted to be an attorney since I was a child because I wanted to help people who were not in a position to help themselves. My desire to liberate myself from what was at times a difficult childhood informed my desire to help others. I was a first-generation college and law student. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I definitely didn't know any lawyers who looked like me. But I believed in what I couldn't see yet. It's also why I love birds. If you come to my home or my office, you'll see pictures of birds and bird figurines. In my yard, you'll find bird feeders. And I love them for a simple reason. They seem free to me. Every time I go to visit a client in prison, I look for the birds. Because the idea that something can fly up and over those walls and fences whenever it wants gives me hope. The idea that something can move away from what it knows and towards something that it can't see yet gives me hope. In order to transform our criminal legal system and our society, which are inextricably linked, we have to have the courage and the vision to believe in something that we cannot see yet, that something different is possible, and that the unfamiliar and the uncomfortable are part of the path. 9,344,000 days. 9,344,000 days, 25,600 years lost. As of 2021, exonerees, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, served a collective 9,344,000 days. Men and women who were innocent of the crimes of which they were convicted. Now, right here in Maryland, according to the registry, just as of last week, as a matter of fact, there have been 42 exonerations since 1989, and those exonerees served a collective 221,555 days, 607 years. Now take a moment to reflect on the enormity of that loss. My clients, they talk to me about aging parents and aging children. They talk about missed birthdays and funerals, the cornerstones of our lives, births and deaths. They talk about growing old themselves. Now, while I was working from home during the pandemic, I spoke with a client, and I happened to mention the rain pouring outside my window and how my dog was sitting in a chair in my office, staring outside, looking at the rain. And he remarked, the client, not my dog, he remarked, "Wow, this is a normal conversation." Millions of mundane, normal conversations missed. Now keep in mind, an exoneration is a very particular kind of thing. It requires working against a system that is designed to preserve convictions. Our criminal legal system worships at the altar of finality. By the time someone has been convicted and sentenced, the burden is on them to prove that something went wrong with the trial. The law presumes that the jury got it right, and the opportunities to challenge that verdict are few and far between. Even for the innocent, it is like threading the eye of a needle while riding a bus driven over a street filled with potholes. The odds are certainly against you. It typically requires evidence such as recanting witnesses, DNA that remains to be tested, forensic science that is now debunked, lawyers, experts. It takes an army of resources and years of litigation to get to an exoneration. On average, it takes about 7.5 years. And if a defendant's case doesn't have evidence that can show it wasn't them, maybe they were convicted without any forensic evidence, maybe they were convicted based on one person's mistakes or lies, their innocence may never be known. Every week, letters pour into our clinic and to Innocence Projects around the country begging for assistance. The exonerees are simply the ones that the public eventually knows about. The exonerees are miracles. To give you a very recent example, the Maryland Court of Appeals recently disbarred State's Attorney for Harford County, Joseph Casserly, for his conduct in the case of Mr. John Huffington. Mr. Huffington was charged with a double homicide in 1981, and the court found, amongst other things, that Mr. Casserly knowingly and intentionally failed to disclose for more than a decade exculpatory evidence that tended to show that the defendant was not guilty, that came to light after the defendant's conviction, that Casserly discarded evidence. He sought to have forensic evidence in the case destroyed, and that he knowingly made false statements to the court and defense counsel about the content of that evidence. After serving 32 years and challenging his case through years of litigation, twice winning a new trial, Mr. Huffington pleaded guilty and received a time-served sentence. Mr. Huffington is not on the list of exonerations. Mr. Huffington's 11,680 days is not accounted for in that 9 million total. When reached for comment, Mr. Casserly stated, "Do I care? I don't give a damn. I wouldn't do anything to engage in the practice of law right now because it is such a screwed up obscenity." Mr. Casserly was elected state's attorney, the highest ranked prosecutor in Harford County for nearly 40 years. He is one of only 5 prosecutors in the United States who have been disbarred for this kind of conduct. The number of exonerations on record so far, 2,884, let us know that Mr. Casserly's conduct is not an aberration. 5 bad actors don't give us 2,884 wrongful convictions. So when we talk about justice in this context, what does that mean? Is Casserly's disbarment justice? Is it a measure of justice? Achieving justice for Mr. Huffington seems impossible to me because we cannot restore Mr. Huffington's 32 lost years. We cannot undo that atrocity. Exonerating the innocent is what is morally required of us, but a just system would not permit such a thing to occur. Mr. Casserly is only a symptom of the problem. Many years ago, I represented a client who was sentenced to life in prison for felony murder in the 70s. In fact, he received his life sentence on my very first birthday. He and I laughed about that. His future lawyer turned 1, on the day that he was given a life sentence. Now, he was serving a life sentence at a time in Maryland where he could get paroled from the particular prison where he was. And he earned parole, but he remained on lifetime supervision. He spent about 25 years building his life, earning success in a leadership position at his job, owning his own home, happily married, raising a daughter who was on the honor roll and on her way to college. He also cared for his elderly mother who lived with him. The years wore on and the stress of lifetime supervision weighed on him. He would sit in the dark after his parole meetings, depressed and withdrawn. He was in his 50s and life was good, but those meetings with parole always reminded him that he was forever a criminal, no matter what he accomplished. And his freedom was not his and could be taken away at any time. One day at an office party, someone passed him a joint and he smoked. Later, he tested positive for marijuana. Law enforcement came to his home at 2 a.m. and terrified his family. They took him back to prison, where they reimposed his life sentence. A 50-something-year-old black man that was, in all senses of the word, rehabilitated. He served 2 more years before we were able to get him out through a drug treatment program. His health declined during those 2 years, and he ultimately needed dialysis and a kidney transplant. He made it out. He survived. He reached back to help other incarcerated men. The grace, courage, and compassion he showed, both while he was incarcerated and after his release, was a testament to his extraordinary character. Anyone who knew him would have been lucky to know him. But getting him out was not justice. His never having been returned to prison would have been closer to justice. Today actually would have been his 69th birthday, and his daughter, a graduate of the University of Maryland at College Park, is watching tonight. I recently was rereading Roxane Gay's New York Times article, "No One is Coming to Save Us from Trump's Racism," about Trump's remarks referring to Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries as shithole countries. She writes, quote, "This is a painful, uncomfortable moment. Instead of trying to get past this moment, we should sit with it. Wrap ourselves in the sorrow, distress, and humiliation of it." That advice applies equally here, that we all must sit with the horrors of our criminal legal system, some of which occur through horrific misconduct, some of which are a product of both individual and systemic racism, some of which occur through vast disparities in resources, some of which occur through callous indifference to the lives of those who are buried alive behind the walls. Before there is a way forward, we must witness and acknowledge the sorrow, distress, and humiliation of it. In 1972, fewer than 350,000 people were being held in prisons and jails nationwide, compared with more than 2 million people today, a 500% increase over the past 40 years, fueled in part by the so-called war on drugs and tough on crime policies. These facts are from the Sentencing Project. They are also referenced in a book we should all be reading, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. These increases are not experienced equally across races. Black men are 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white men, and Latinx men are 1.3 times as likely. Right here, in our own backyard, in our blue state of Maryland, we have the dubious distinction of incarcerating a greater proportion of our black citizens than any other state in the nation. 30% of our population is black. 70% of our prison population is black. 87% of our juvenile lifers are black. Women, particularly women of color, are also experiencing this trend. Between 2008 and 2020, there was a 43% increase in women serving life without parole sentences. Nationally, 1 in every 39 incarcerated black women is serving a life without parole sentence, as compared to 1 in 59 incarcerated white women. Women serving life sentences report high levels of psychiatric disorders, histories of being victims of physical and sexual violence, and previous suicide attempts. So where do we go from here? The title of this talk is taken from a quote from someone I greatly admire, Bryan Stevenson, the author of another book we should all be reading, Just Mercy. He is a career criminal defense attorney and the founder and executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative. He says that each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. That belief informs my work. And I think it applies not just to those that we might label criminal or convict, it applies to all of us. It applies to our legal system and our society. If we are to change, we must believe that we are capable of more than the worst of our criminal legal system. That our story, because it is our story, doesn't end with 9,344,000 stolen days. Something else is possible. That our story doesn't end with our state caging a greater proportion of its black citizens than any other state in the nation. And there are reasons to be hopeful and reasons to keep fighting. We've made many positive gains in the legislature, and we'll have more to come, I hope, this session. This last session, we saw the passage of the Walter Lomax Act, named after exoneree, activist, and my friend, Walter Lomax. I first met Walter in prison, but he wasn't incarcerated. We were both there to talk to lifers about their rights. I already knew his story, so when I met him, I thought, my God, the courage and generosity to set foot in a prison after what had been done to him. The Walter Lomax Act provides for compensation for the exonerated. It provides a specific amount, formula, and timeline for payment. Prior to the passage of the act, exonerees spent years fighting to receive the compensation they needed and deserved. Another change that I'm so thrilled to see happening in Maryland is the Juvenile Restoration Act. Similar legislation is happening in states around the country. This law eliminates life without parole sentences for children in Maryland. This law also permits individuals in Maryland who were children at the time of the crime, who have served at least 20 years, to go back to court and demonstrate that they are rehabilitated. They can request a reduction in sentence. Under this bill, 412 men and women who are serving life or life equivalent sentences may ask for a second chance. This law passed with the support of a broad coalition of formerly incarcerated individuals, crime victims, activists, and local and national organizations and legislators. As we begin to look at the impact of this legislation in other states, we can see that the recidivism rate, the instances where a person released commits another crime, of this population is less than 1%. We also have our legislative work cut out for us. Maryland is one of 3 states in our nation that requires the governor's approval to parole someone who's serving a parole-eligible life sentence. In 1995, then Governor Paris Glendening made his infamous life means life pronouncement. He stopped granting parole to anyone serving a life sentence, even those who pleaded guilty to avoid life without parole sentences in exchange for the possibility of someday earning parole. Now, in all fairness and in recognition that we are all more than our worst mistakes, our mistakes and our bad decisions, Paris Glendening has recently publicly expressed his regret for that policy. The policy continued up until Governor Hogan, who did begin paroling some lifers, though they were precious few. After decades of effort by activists and organizations, the bill to remove the governor from the parole system in Maryland finally passed last session. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed the bill. But I am hopeful the veto will be overridden in a special legislative session on December 6th. There's also work to be done to re-enfranchise our formerly incarcerated citizens. Did you know that in Maryland, if you have a criminal conviction and you've served more than a year, felony or misdemeanor, you can never serve on a jury. You are permanently disqualified. When you are aware of the racial breakdown in our prisons and jails, it becomes clear what portion of our population is being disenfranchised. Last session, legislation was proposed to change juror disqualification in Maryland, and I hope to see that legislation pass this session. There's also important juvenile justice reforms up this session as well. Maryland charges more children in adult court than any other state other than Alabama. One of the juvenile justice reform bills would end the automatic charging of kids in adult courts. I hope to see that and other juvenile justice reform efforts pass this session. I'm also encouraged by prosecutors' offices who believe that their mandate to do justice requires that they devote resources to reviewing the cases of the wrongfully convicted and the overly incarcerated. Many of the exonerations I've talked about today were made possible with the collaboration of conviction integrity units. Specialized units within prosecutors' offices are popping up around the country, often staffed by former defense attorneys. The mission of these units is to re-examine old cases and identify the innocent. Just last week in Baltimore City, David Morse was exonerated after serving 17 years. His exoneration came through the collaboration of the UB Innocence Project Clinic, the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, and the Conviction Integrity Unit of the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. Prior to the passage of the JRA, I worked on the case of one juvenile lifer for 8 years. He was incarcerated when he was 16 years old and given a life sentence in 1994 when parole was still a possibility. His sentencing judge spoke about his expectation that someday he'd be paroled, but he never was. Glendenning's policy changed a year later and sealed his fate. Somehow, despite his circumstances, he maintained positivity and hope. Despite receiving a life sentence, what became a death in prison sentence after the governor's shift in policy, this client never gave up hope and never stopped fighting for himself. Ultimately, we convinced a judge to reduce his sentence, and he was released when he was 40 years old. He sends me a text every year on our Freedomversary, and he sends me pictures of his son. His resilience astounds and inspires me. The wrongfully convicted who continue to fight for themselves, who believe that something different is possible, that they might fight against all, that they might triumph against all the forces that have rallied against them to bury them alive, astound and inspire me. Men and women who've been thrown away as children, sentenced to death in prison sentences, who don't give up, who help others, earn degrees, continue to work on themselves despite being told that they are done. They believe in something more than what they can see. They believe that something different is possible for them. And I would invite you to do the same, to have the courage and curiosity and vision to know that something different is possible and that every single one of us has a role to play in that change. Local politics matter. Pay attention to your elected officials. Support those whose values align with your own. Call them up. Tell them how you think they should vote. Listen and amplify the voices and stories of those who are or have been incarcerated. Support organizations such as the Judge Alexander Williams Center and others who work to address disparities in justice. Continue to educate yourselves about our criminal legal system and its impact on our communities. My students, the next generation of lawyers who are filled with hope and zeal and compassion, inspire me. And those students are gaining another opportunity to learn about, interact with, and impact the criminal legal system with UB's new Center for Criminal Justice Reform, which was established through a generous donation from alumnus Sam Rose. This center will support community-driven efforts to improve the criminal legal system and will bring together UB students, faculty, members of the community, and decision makers to examine how the criminal legal system currently functions and to collaborate and propose reforms that will reduce systemic inequality and promote justice. I am grateful to the Maryland Office of the Public Defender and the University of Baltimore School of Law for the privilege of my position, for their belief in the mission and their investment in the Innocence Project Clinic. My clinic is fortunate to be an affiliate of the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, which connects us with the broader network of innocence organizations around the country. I'm so grateful to the Judge Alexander Williams Center for its commitment to justice and for shining a light on the clinic and supporting us in our work. My mission as the director of the Innocence Project Clinic is to identify and to work to exonerate the innocent. That is my job. But I came to this work with experience working with the wrongfully convicted and the overly incarcerated. My humanity and the humanity of my clients require that my personal mission is broader. Those that we know to be innocent now were once considered the guilty and the condemned, and there are so many more that we don't know about yet. But also understand that those that we have condemned are more than the act for which we have condemned them. I'd remind you that some of my most satisfying victories have been accomplished by inches, over time, continuing to hang in and looking for the next opportunity. I'm not encouraging you to be patient, but I am encouraging you to be dogged, to be relentless, to be a weeble wobble. I encourage you to believe in things that your eyes haven't seen yet. I invite you to reject false binaries, justice or mercy, criminal or victim, us or them. Our fates are bound up with each other. I'll leave you with 3 of the most important things I've learned from this work. First, we cannot incarcerate our way to safety or wholeness. Second, compassion is not a finite resource or a zero-sum game. Showing compassion for the incarcerated does not diminish your capacity to care about and support victims of crime. Investing in resources to help our returning citizens transition benefits us all, as does investing resources in our communities to address the root of these disparities. Last, I'll remind you of the birds. There is risk in reaching out toward what we cannot yet see, but there is faith in the gamble, and there is value in the reach and the attempt. That client that I told you about in the beginning, whose case I worked on for 13 years, he was resentenced after serving 32 years. I lost his case over and over and over again, till one day I didn't. The tide shifted. The path ahead toward a more just and equitable society is not a straight line. It will inevitably involve joyous victories and painful defeats. But to quote Angela Davis, you have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. Thank you.
Right. You could see the passion and the power that she had. Thank you, Erica Suter, the director of the Innocence Project at the University of Baltimore School of Law. Let's give her a hand. Thank you, Erica. I asked her, I said, Erica, this year's theme is criminal justice reform. I want you as a speaker, and she gladly accepted right on the spot. So we know that justice is in fine hands with someone with that type of passion and vision to help those that need to be helped. So again, let me thank all of you for supporting this center again this year. We have some wonderful sponsors, and they're listed in our program. Thank you. This is how we keep our programs going, and next year at this time we hope to be telling you more about our expansion to the Thurgood Marshall Center at PS 103. But I want you to have a wonderful safe trip home. Thank again our MC. Let's give her a hand again one more time, Mary Marshall. And I thank all of you for, again, supporting what we're doing here at the University of Maryland in College Park. Have I forgotten anything on staff? Yeah, we are early. But, okay, I'll go through and just thank all of our supporters. Some of you have supported us this evening, but let's look at the program. And again, our thought sponsors, again, AT&T, Jones Day, Kelly Benefit, Google, Kim Posse, and Michael Pastor, my law clerk. Organizer sponsors, Geico, again, Christopher and Patricia Lambert, who are on our board. Silverman Thompson firm that I've long been affiliated with, Densmore Legal Counsel, Nelson Mullins, G.S. Proctor, SR Consulting and Management, LLC. Again, our advocate sponsors, PK Law, Miles and Stockbridge Foundation, Adrian Mosley, she's with Pepsi. Influence sponsors, Mark Vogel, Shipley and Horn. Again, Prince Security, the McCammon Group. And in lovely memory of Ken E. Glover. Lauren, are you here this evening? Lauren here? Lauren, so, yes, all right. Lauren, yes, Lauren supports us every year, and I want to say something about Ken Glover. Ken Glover was right at the beginning of the start with me when I came up with ideas for this, and he helped me capture the mission for this center. Ken left us earlier than we wanted, but thank you, Lauren, for continuing to remember him, and we will never forget his kindness, his vision, and the support that he provided this center. Glasses here. Known Michael Wells, again, PK Law, the Horton Group, Sony International, again, Dr. Alicia Dorensberg and Tommy Thompson, my Roosevelt High School class of '66, Joyce Ann Williams and the Williams Law Center. That's my sister, who is a lawyer in Maryland, does a lot of estate work. Craig Law Group out of Baltimore, Joe and Mary Lomax. Are you here, Joe and Mary? Not here. Eric Chu and his wonderful wife. She's not here either. Again, Teresa. Let's see, PK Law. And Kelly Benefits here. AT&T, again, we've mentioned More Equity, Densmore, and of course the University of Baltimore School of Law. How can we ever forget Shipley Horn, the wonderful support that we get from them, and from Silverman Thompson. And look at all the friends we have that have supported us. Rosalind Tang, Ted Howard, Alice Tang, the Patriot Construction, Dr. Rodney Ellis and Carol Musenden, Greg Johnson, Dr. Alicia Robinson, D.L.A. Piper, Shirley Hoffman, Ellis Koch and his daughter, the judge, Mr. Roberta Jaracuso, Ms. Joyce A. Williams again, and Marcus Bonsip and Joseph Greenwalk and Lake. And again, I think I've mentioned Naomi Howard Posey and Ted Howard. And of course, Tommy Thompson and Dr. Alicia Jarensberg. So those are our supporters and many more. Let's all thank them. Let me ask all of the directors who are here of the AW Center if you could stand and be recognized. Some of you already met all of our directors that are here. All right, okay. So this was another wonderful evening. Last year we had our focus on educational disparities. This year was criminal justice reform, and next year we have something in the area of ethics. So join us next year. Put it on your calendar, the second Thursday every November at 5:30. Hopefully here again at the Hotel. Thank you and have a good evening. All right.